Because a lot of things seems like a great idea in your mind.
And in the beginning.
But when you start spending money, it's like, I don't want to dedicate the time, energy, or money to this.
Right. Hey, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Chris.
And welcome to our story. Today, we're going to talk about the beta project. So what in the world is that?
So if you know an entrepreneur like me, I'm a bit of a dreamer.
Yes.
And oftentimes with being a dreamer, I'm pretty sure every significant other who is married to or dating an entrepreneur, when they say they're a dreamer, cringes a little bit when they say
Just
that.
a little bit.
Because I have thousands of ideas and they change from day to day.
Yeah.
So I like to call them beta projects. It's when I have something that I think will be a good idea, but I really don't know, and I really don't want to switch gears or 100% commit to it. I'll come up with a plan to where I can test it without throwing a whole bunch of resources at it. And it really helps Stephanie out a lot of times, because with her, I find that by having a beta project, we can have that discussion. We can establish what the expectations are on the front end. And then we can measure the results and ensure the expectations are met before we turn it into a full-blown project.
Do you remember our first beta project?
Oh, absolutely.
The mobile butler.
Oh, absolutely.
We lived in Virginia.
The worst idea ever. Well,
it's
honestly,
It's funny because they're doing it now.
Yeah, honestly,
it was simply just delivering groceries.
Yeah, it was basically Uber Eats. And we went down to the city, we
got the license.
We got the license, we registered
so
the trademark, we did everything about it. But that brings to a good point. Oftentimes, when you have a project like that you're super passionate about, you will throw a bunch of resources at it. So if you don't run that beta test, then you're like, man, I've spent thousands of dollars to this, and it's a passion project. You're just throwing money after money after money at it. And then by the time you looked up, it's morphed into something that it was never intentionally intended to be. I kick myself off in times that I didn't
Do you kick yourself often? Often doesn't happen.
Uber Eats is making a lot of money right now, and I didn't get none of that. So.
Right. Yeah, so basically that fizzled out really fast, didn't it?
But that's the importance of having that beta project, because we could have never done it as well as Uber Eats, because it was a cast off from Uber. That
was like over 10 years ago now. So this was way before.
That was way over 10 years ago. That was like maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Our mind was in the right place. Our heart was in the right place.
At the time, the infrastructure wasn't there.
It just wasn't.
To support it. We didn't have the resources, the academic knowledge, or the know-how, or the connections to even make that happen. But the beta test told us that.
Yeah.
When we went out and we put a little bit of resource in to try to develop this business, we saw like, hey, you need some major investors to build the infrastructure necessary to make this happen.
Right.
Uber Eats leverages the whole Uber back office.
Right.
To make that happen. They leverage their reputation, the best practice learned establishing that,
They have the manpower.
The manpower, yeah.
And the technology.
Yeah.
So definitely. So we want to talk about more of the real estate business, right? As far as the beta project. So how did that start off? How did we test those waters to see if that was something that was sustainable, that's something that we could do over years and years there?
So first thing we did, we sat down and we had an in-depth conversation about what the expectations were, what success needed to look like on the back end. Because I've said it time and time again, real estate is a very expensive game.
Yeah.
Definitely if you do it wrong.
Definitely.
So if you were able to come together in the beginning, establish these benchmarks so that you can you can measure success or failure throughout the process. So the first thing we did, we sat down like, hey, what exactly does this look like? And I don't know is not a good answer.
No.
I'll find out is a good answer. I'll research it is a good answer, but I don't know is not a good answer. So we sat down and said, okay, these are the expectations. These are the measurables. That's the first step. Then the second step is having an agreement. It's okay, this is when we will assess it. If it's a go at this state, we'll move forward. If it is a no at this state, we will stop, or somewhere in between. The second thing is to... The third thing is to find out if there's any exterior factors that...
Like roadblocks, would you say?
Like roadblocks or restrictions that play. If there's a law in place that say you can't do it, more than likely the beta project's going to tell you that, and you're going to stop.
Right.
Like mixing liquor in your trunk may seem like a good idea, but I'm quite sure there's a few government organizations that will say otherwise.
Sure. Yes.
so that is the third thing. You want to make sure there's no restrictions in place to stop you from doing it.
Right.
And the final thing is to get out, make it happen, start doing things.
Right.
Because that brings me to my next point.
Making connections.
That brings me to my next point. The great thing about a beta project is it puts you in a room where things happen.
Right.
A lot of the good things that have happened to me in the past have been a result of me starting, taking action. It was a beta project that I was working on, and I met somebody who was far along in the process, and then I was able to leverage their skill set, their knowledge, their experience, their know-how, and it skipped me right from like phase 1 to phase 3 immediately, you know? So,
and I would think with beta project, it helps you know like what's realistic, what's unrealistic. And then you talked about in the beginning the expectations, but doesn't that change as you're going through?
Absolutely.
Because you know those expectations as you gain the knowledge, then the expectations change too. It's like, okay, well now we have this expectation or we have this. This is something that we have to consider because now we have more knowledge. So then we have to take this into consideration and things like that, which is what we on our first real estate property we did a lot.
Yeah, we did a lot
of that. That was a big learning curve.
And we understood. The great thing about our first property that we bought, we wrote the whole thing off as a beta project initially. We said,
absolutely,
success on the back end of this looks like, is this a good idea?
Right.
Identifying whether this is a good idea or not.
Is it feasible?
Yeah. Gaining the knowledge necessary to move forward. Building our Rolodex.
Is it realistic?
Is it creating cash flow?
Do we have the money?
You know,
I mean, I could go on all day.
So even though that was a very expensive beta test,
it was.
You know, we did it in a way that we leveraged that expense, that it bled into other areas of our lives so that we had an exit strategy if we needed to move on from it. And that's the good thing about a beta project. They're usually done on a scale that if you need to cut ties, you can do it quickly.
Would you say also too that first beta project, that real estate, that tested our resilience?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, do we have what it takes to do another property? And then another property, another property, another property too, so.
Not just do you have what it takes, but do we have the want to continue doing this? Because a lot of things seems like a great idea in your mind.
And in the beginning.
But when you start spending money, it's like, I don't want to dedicate the time, energy, or money to this.
Right, yeah, because when you've got all this money going into your project, then, I mean, you still got to eat, you got to pay, you know, the taxes, the rent, then the kids going to want something, you know, new laptop, cell phone, you know, so it's like, you know, you have to really think. My grandmother used to tell me you can only spend money one time.
Exactly.
You okay?
Exactly.
So once it's gone, that's it.
That's it.
That's all. Yeah, so I think, you know, what Krishana is saying, the beta project, that is going to be the crux. So that's going to be the most important thing you do when you're testing out when you're trying to test out a business idea or something new you want to try.
Now, we want to say we're not experts in this field in any way, shape, or form.
Not at all.
There are experts out there who specialize in this, and we encourage you to reach out and consult them and get their input as well.
We're from the school of hard knocks.
Exactly.
That's what we're from.
We just people who have done this in the past, and we're trying to help you to avoid some of the pitfalls that we fell into.
Absolutely.
But I want to leave you with this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Before you enter into a business venture that will cost you a lot of time, money, and energy, sit down and see if you can turn it into a beta project. Sit down and see if you can scale this to a point to where you can put the least amount of resources into it, but still gain the knowledge and information necessary to see if it's even viable. So, one, sit down with your significant other, have a conversation with them to see if they're on board. 2, identify what success looks like on the back end. 3, consult experts. 4, get in a room where things are happening.
In a room where things happen. I really like that. Well, thank you so much for your advice, Krishana. It's amazing. We appreciate it, and thank you so much for coming along on this journey with us. We're so thankful, and we really like what we're doing. We're passionate about it. Remember, do something nice for someone today, and no matter what your goals are, you can do it.
And remember, we're just ordinary people trying to do extraordinary things.
You know it.